Now, I made a film called Crop Circles, The Hidden Truth, where I interviewed various researchers, objective researchers, researchers who get down on their hands and knees and examine hundreds of these crop circles. And I can't go through, obviously, in this forum all the information, but I'm going to give you the salient points. The conclusions that I came to when having interviewed these crop circle researchers and also done a bit of other digging, is that some circles, they cannot be explained by people mechanically flattening them with planks. The vast majority are made with planks, and I'll explain why. But some of them can't be explained in those terms. To demonstrate this, I'm going to show you a crop circle, and I'd be quite interested to know if anyone has an explanation of how this could have been made.
What about the Ogbourne-St. George formation? Because that's another one that you believe that is a non-man-made.
Absolutely, certainly genuine formation. I mean, the main thing about that was the way the crop had been laid. It wasn't flat to the ground. It was laid like the grooves of a record, wasn't it, Dave? So
yeah.
The top bit of lay was probably only a few inches below the general level of the crop in the field.
To illustrate what Robert means by the grooves of a record, we can zoom into the circle in question. The arrow here shows where the photograph to the right was taken. From ground level we can see the disturbance has occurred just a few inches from the top of the crop, but this has a significant visual effect when viewed from above. Ask yourself, what could create this kind of effect? Certainly not a plank of wood.
Then the next band, slightly higher, then lower again, then higher, then lower, then higher, and so it goes on right across this circle. The effect is so delicate.
Now, that is not typical of 99% of the circles which appear, which are flat to the ground and they have these physical board marks in them, okay, which is clear evidence of planking. And David and Robert there in that clip, they've examined hundreds of circles, and the vast majority of them, they find these giveaway bruise marks on the bottom of the crop which show that they've been boarded. So you ask the question, why is there hundreds of these circles being made by people? What's the point of it? Okay, because what I found in my film is that there is a well-coordinated, well-funded regime which commissions the man-made crop circles in order to confuse the media and public, to lead them to believe that they're all man-made. And this is the group that make them. The guy in the middle, or the guy with the black t-shirt at the front there, is a guy called John Lundberg, and I believe up until fairly recently he was the main person involved in their team. They were known as Team Satan, a highly organised team who I believe were funded by MI5, and I'll come on to why I think that. Now, if we just look at the amount of crop circles, this graph comes from a researcher called Paul Weige, who died a couple of years ago in extremely mysterious circumstances. He was 43 and he walked in the sea. Now, I'm very suspicious about his death because I believe he was getting towards the truth about crop circles. Now, this shows how many circles have been produced from 1996 to 2003, and we can see there that on average you've got about 100 circles per year, predominantly in Wiltshire. Now, if we just consider that graph, there's about 5 to 6 people required to, I mean, I'm talking about these complex Mayan designs, astronomical designs that appear every summer. 5 to 6 people, it takes them a day to produce a circle. The season for crop circles is about 120 days long. Now that's about, an average of about 1 circle a day that's being produced. And since 1993, that's like 17 years of this. Now, can you imagine someone doing that for nothing? Not every day going out, trampling these, getting pissed on by the rain. How long do you think it would be before this team would get pissed off? I think it wouldn't be long. In my opinion, this has to be a funded activity. Now let's just say that team requires funding. I would estimate, because the members of that team there, one of them lives in London, another one lives in Devon, They travel quite long distances to Wiltshire to make these circles. They will require expenses. I would estimate £1,000 a day is a fair estimate for how much that team would be paid. As I say, the season's 120 days long. That's £120,000 per season. It's my guess as to how much these guys are being paid. And over 17 years, that's a cost of £2 million. Now let's just take a look at the ringleader of this group that are responsible, and they admit to being responsible for making hundreds of crop circles. You go on their website, they'll tell you how to make them. They'll show you that films of them making these crop circles. And Lundberg is, or was, I mean, this is, I'm talking about from 92 to probably 2004, 2005. He was the main person, or the leader of that team. Now, Lundberg went to the Slade School of Fine Art and did a Fine Arts Masters. Now, this was his final year at university. Now, that's a map in red. That's the headquarters of MI5 at that time in 1991. And the blue is the school he went to. Now, intelligence agents often recruit their people in their final year at university. Now, that's no proof. But he was studying next door to MI5 for a whole year. And coincidentally, that was the year before he started making crop circles. This is the Crop Circle Makers website. In my opinion, I used to be a web designer, that site has been heavily funded. It's won lots of awards. And they have a source of funding, which they even admit to. Now, the other thing I just mentioned here is that in the past, although they've been removed, adverts on their site for MI5 careers have appeared. Now, here's some text. This is Paul Weige here. That's the guy who's dead now, I was telling you about, who I think there's extreme suspicion about his death. This is Lundberg speaking on his website. This is the ringleader of the Crop Circle Makers. You'd be surprised how expensive running a successful website can be. Don't panic, we're not going to ask you for money. Our retainer from sources we'd rather not disclose has kept our virtual head above water. So he's admitting that he's funded and that he has a retainer. Okay, so John, as I say, John Lundberg, he's the linchpin, I believe. He's the leader of the team that makes these crop circles. And I'm just going to show you some other things I found out about him. Because I decided to find out where he lived. And I also found out information about 3 companies that he started, and all that information is in my film. He lives in London in a very posh flat. Now, I went to the land registry and got the deeds to his flat, okay? And in the block of flats where he lives, that's in red, there's about 40 posh apartments in London. I found that the apartment had never been bought or sold since it was built in 1995. All these other apartments had been bought and sold. There was a block of 4 which had the same anomaly. I thought, well, how can the flat not have been bought or sold? Not only that, the land that it was registered as being built on was incorrect. It was listed as being built on this blue property here, whereas all of the other properties were listed correctly. So I found a housing association which was listed as basically taking care of these 4 flats, one of which he lived in, incidentally, which would probably cost about £1,000 a month to rent. And I said, oh, do you have any flats to rent in that block? They said, yeah, we've got 4. I said, okay, can you give me information on them? They said, oh, they're not rented like a normal flat. I said, what do you mean? He says, oh, well, the rents are not paid for by the tenants. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, they're either leased or they're paid for by the council. Okay, now I looked up the occupations of the 3 other flats. One of them was a microbiologist, one of them was an actor, and I forget what the other one was. And one of them was Lundberg, the crop circle maker. So in other words, they don't have occupations that would entitle them to housing benefit. So the rents are not being paid for by the council. So he's living in one of these 4 flats that have never ever been bought or sold and is not being rented, or it's been leased by some organisation. So I believe he's been given a free house by MI5, and I've uncovered 4 MI5 safe houses. And I've just recalled now what the occupation of the other person was in the 4th flat. She was a journalist, very active politically in the National Union of Journalists, and is on the Black Members Council. Now, that's possibly someone that MI5 would want to keep tabs on. I actually contacted the head of the National Union of Journalists, and I told him about this. He was quite interested, but obviously there's no proof of this. But I believe that Lundberg has been getting free accommodation at the taxpayer's expense in an MI5 safe house, because he could not have earned any money with this activity. How is he living in a £1,000 a month flat in London? Okay, so the conclusions are that some crop circles cannot be explained by people mechanically flattening crop fields. Over 95% of crop circles are man-made by that group, or possibly other groups now. There is a well-coordinated, well-funded project which commissions the man-made crop circles in order to confuse the media and the public to lead them to believe that all are man-made, because I believe that the military are very interested in the real crop circle phenomenon. And we have to say that they've been totally successful with that disinformation campaign, because you ask someone on the street who makes crop circles, and nearly everyone will say, well, they're made by people. So they've been really successful in their disinformation. That group is funded to keep the public away from the real phenomenon, because, as I say, military helicopters have been filmed many times over some of the genuine formations. Okay, and just finish with this. All truth passes through three stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. Third, it is accepted as being self-evident. I'm going to have a pint. Thank you.